Ronna McDaniel, chairwoman of the RNC, and of course a major player in Michigan politics before you led the RNC. So tell me about how you got to this position.
Well, I've always been involved in politics. My maiden name's Romney, and I grew up in a political family and worked on campaigns from school board to my mom's Senate race and, of course, my Uncle Mitt's race, but really engaged at the grassroots level as a precinct delegate, knocking doors, engaging in my neighborhood, and then worked my way as a state committee woman and then as the national committee woman and then as state party chair.
I can remember being in Michigan at 1 a.m. in the morning, doing like the 5th or 6th rally of the day, covering then candidate Donald Trump, thinking, why are all these people here? What are we doing here? Why are we speaking past midnight? And it was like a night or two before the election. You were on the ground in Michigan. You were the head of the Republican Party in Michigan. What did everybody miss?
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to be party chair for 2016 is I knew that Michigan could be in play. And so as each candidate came to our state during the primaries, I talked to them about how Michigan was a winnable state and we'd been flown over for far too long. And we saw it early on. When Donald Trump came, he had a huge crowd. He created a movement. We knew the numbers were shifting his way, really through the RNC and the data programs. So we were able to see that blue counties that were typically Democrat voters were shifting red. So then I was able to put resources there and put offices there and knock doors there. And we saw that that was shifting. We were hoping to fly under the radar. We knew the Democrats did not have the ground game and they weren't investing in Michigan.
Underdog.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton kind of figured it out right at the end, but it was too late.
Okay, but this was a bruising political campaign. I mean, the primary, the dynamics within the Republican Party, you coming from a political family yourself. So what was it like to get the call from then President-elect Donald Trump that you were going to take over the RNC? And a lot of people were surprised by this.
I was so honored when President Trump endorsed me for this position. It meant a lot to have Reince have faith in me as well. Coming as a state party chair and coming to this level, it's thrilling. And then you go, wow, we've got a lot of work to do.
So what are you going to do? What's the lot of work that you have to do?
Well, we have to keep the momentum. I mean, Reince really reconfigured the RNC and took it back to the basics and understood that we had to be on the ground early and focus on the mechanics of the election. And we've got to continue to do that. So we have hit the ground running at the RNC. I've been over 50,000 miles. I've been in 15 states, engaging not with just grassroots, but also with donors, small to high dollar donors. We have to have the resources so that we can get on the ground early.
Let's talk about donors, because the folks, I think, and it's been fascinating to watch President Trump's political orbit, people like Michael Cohen, people like Steve Wynn merge with the RNC. I mean, that just a year ago, that would have been a far-fetched idea. Now it seems that there's a much more cohesion. What's your message to donors when you're walking out there, especially around the corner from 2018?
Well, exactly what I just discussed. Our message to donors is we have to keep momentum. We can't become complacent because we're heading into a midterm and we already are building up our ground game towards victory.
What are the states that are competitive for 2018?
Well, we have the Senate map where we have 10 states where President Trump won, where we have Democrat incumbents. And a lot of them are the Rust Belt states, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. And then you have North Dakota and Florida and Montana, and you have states that we can be competitive in and really pick up seats on the Senate side.
See, North Dakota is interesting because Senator Heidi Heitkamp is a Democrat who actually has proven to be one of the few Democrats in the upper chamber who are actually willing to work with the White House. So is that a political risk? I mean, do you want to keep some Democrats who have shown a willingness to work with across the aisle?
Well, they vote with their Democrat majority a lot, and they would put Chuck Schumer in as the Senate Majority Leader, and that's a non-starter. So while they may seem like they're willing to work across the aisle on some things, when it comes to the leadership, they're always going to vote for that Democrat leader and Chuck Schumer, who has shown that he's only interested right now in obstructing anything that the president wants to do to help the American people.
Chairwoman, we are coming up on the 100-day mark of President Trump's first term in office. What has been his biggest achievement so far?
Well, I think the president hit the ground running from the day he got elected. He was focusing on bringing jobs back to this country. He's created a stellar cabinet. But I think the signature achievement of these first 100 days really has to be the nomination of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court.
Even with the deploying of the so-called political nuclear option?
I think Absolutely. To have Justice Scalia be replaced with a jurist of this caliber, to see the way he handled himself in his Senate confirmation hearings, and then to see him now on the bench already engaging.
People like Senator John McCain, they view the nuclear option as an absolute mistake.
It wasn't the nuclear option, it was the Reid rule. That's what we employed. The rule that the Democrats put in place that changed how we put jurists in place. And it's unfortunate that the Democrats did that.
What's been the biggest misstep or blemish or hardest part of the first 100 days? Has to be healthcare.
Well, I think you do learn that you can't get everything done at once, and it is going to take time. And Republicans have a dialogue, and we have a discussion, and we have disagreements. And by the way, that's going to make for better legislation on the back end. When we are transparent and we go to our voters and say, what do you want to see out of this? We're going to end up with a better health care bill because of that conversation that we're having, not just within our party, but with the voters. And take note, the Democrats know that health care is failing, and they are nowhere to be seen. They don't want to be part of this conversation.
Let me politely press back here a little bit, because you have a Republican White House, you have a Republican House, you have a Republican Senate. And I heard all during the campaign that they were going to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. What do you say to Republicans all across the country, in Michigan, who are looking at Washington and thinking, Republicans saying, we delivered, we got you the majorities, why can't you fix Obamacare? What is this dysfunction, even with Republicans in control?
Well, we're not even 100 days in, and it's going to take time. And what you say to the voters is, give us time, because we know what's going on. And it is collapsing, and people are really hurting. I saw it in my state when premiums are going up in double digits every year, and when your deductibles are so high that your health care is something you're afraid of. This is something we have to fix. And you have seen the president take leadership and in his joint address to Congress say, let's work across party lines. Let's find solutions because people are hurting. It's unfortunate that Democrats have chosen to basically go on strike.
Can Republicans hold on to the majority if there isn't a legislative victory on tax reform, on health care, or even on deregulatory financial policies?
I have confidence that Republicans are going to continue to work and get these things accomplished. And we're going to have to, we are going to have to show that we can keep our campaign promises going into 2018. There's no question that's going to be something that we're going to be held accountable for with the voters. But we're working on it. The president is leading. You've seen Republicans having robust discussions. We know that people are hurting. We're going to continue to put people above politics.
What's your message to lawmakers who are about to come back from recess on Monday? What's your message to them as they head into this to talk about all of these policies and, again, healthcare, which they were unable to get done?
Well, I think the message to the lawmakers are going to be given to them from their voters. And as they go back to their districts and they hear their stories about how they're hurting, about how healthcare is something that they expect us to work on and repeal and replace, they're going to need to get that done and continue to work with the president on that, and tax reform and infrastructure, which is also a priority of President Trump.
Okay, so everyone in Washington right now is saying that Georgia Congressional District number 6 matters. What is a win for Republicans? What are you going to be looking for in these results?
Well, we expect to go to a runoff tonight because the Democrats have coalesced around one candidate, and we have a large field of great candidates, many of them who would be excellent congressional members from that district. So I expect there'll be a Democrat and a Republican going through to the runoff. But it's interesting to note that Jon Ossoff, the Democrat, can't even vote for himself today. He's not even from the district. So if he can't vote for himself in his own election, why would people from Georgia support him?
But this is a Republican-controlled district. This is Secretary Price's seat. So why is it so close in the first place? And is this really an anti-Trump sentiment? Are you concerned about this as we head into the 2018 midterms?
Every special election's unique. You have different components that feed into a special election. Your voter turnout is harder to predict. We have Republicans engaged in a primary where they're each trying to be that person going through to the runoff. So all of those components, you don't have an incumbent in that field. All of those components add to a different type of election than what you would traditionally see in a midterm or a
So do
presidential
you think this
year.
is a bellwether of where the country is right now?
I don't think it's a bellwether. I think it's a one-off because there are so many unique characteristics to each of these special elections, and you can't model turnout. It's harder to predict who's paying attention and coming out to vote in these elections. So I think you have to take each of these special elections on an individual basis.
So you don't think that this is an indicator of 2018 regardless of what happens?
I don't. I don't think you can predict what 2018 is going to be based on an election not even 100 days into the first term of President Trump's administration.